And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Friday morning's flying weather showing a lot of IFR here over the northern Bering Sea and into the southwest coast here, especially into the Yukon Delta there, through the Bering Strait, up and around, and dropping into the Arctic coast and North Slope. Noatak Valley there, VFR, and good VFR, Central Eastern Interior. Marginal VFR across the Kuskokwim Valley, actually into Cook Inlet there across the Alaska Range. Prince William Sound, marginal VFR, as well as the North Gulf Coast. Marginal VFR right along the outer coastline of the Panhandle. Inside waters, though, looking good, VFR. And marginal VFR for the Aleutians becoming IFR there from about Amchitka Island westward to Chimionatu. And then for the afternoon, improvement here back to the west with VFR all the way into Kuskokwim Bay and along the entire Yukon River Valley there, right up into the flats. Some marginal VFR along the Brooks Range, otherwise the North Slope and the Arctic Coast VFR. IFR right around the Seward Peninsula there into Norton Sound, and then southward to the Pribilof Islands and southeastward there into western Bristol Bay, but staying mostly off the coast. And IFR east side of Kodiak Island, back up into areas just east of Chignik. Alaska Peninsula tomorrow afternoon, not too bad. Nelson Lagoon, King Cove, False Pass, Cold Bay, mostly VFR. Adak and Atka, about the same thing. Otherwise, the Bering Sea, pretty marginal, with a little bit of IFR here out over the far western Aleutians. Southeast coast, good VFR. And that holds through Saturday morning. Good start to the weekend here for the Panhandle, North Gulf Coast, interior Alaska. Brooks Range, areas of IFR, but the Arctic coast looking good. IFR pretty well entrenched over the Chukchi Sea now, and Seward Peninsula into the northern Bering Sea, and then another branch southeastward there to the Alaska Peninsula with marginal VFR over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, and a couple of weak bands of IFR out here to the west. And so let's see what happens to those in the afternoon. Saturday, they kind of combined in building IFR there. Mostly Chimionatu, otherwise marginal for the remainder of the Aleutian chain. Bering Sea, mostly marginal. A couple IFR patches here over the eastern Bering. Also up to the north there. Shishmaref, maybe Buckland, IFR into the Bering Strait. And marginal VFR for the North Slope, interior Alaska. Good VFR from the Brooks Range right on down to Bristol Bay. Eastward, looking really good for the North Gulf Coast Saturday afternoon. Copper River Basin, eastern interior, and the northern Panhandle, southern areas picking up some marginal VFR. And for the passes, Anatuvik, marginal VFR. Adigan, marginal at times. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR at times throughout the day on Friday. And for Rainy, marginal VFR, trending toward VFR in the afternoon. Windy, VFR. Isabel and Mentasta, eastern Alaska Range, VFR. And for Tanita, good VFR there also. Portage, starting out marginal, becoming VFR midday through the afternoon toward evening. And Chilkoot and Hawaii, a couple of VFR days coming up, both Friday and Saturday. Freezing levels here, 4,000 feet in the central interior and 2,000 feet all the way out in toward the Seward Peninsula and the western Arctic coast. Otherwise, at the surface area, very close to the Pribilofs tomorrow morning, and about 4 to 5,000 feet or so over the southeast coast. And then we've got some warmer air building out here over the western Aleutians and southwest Bering Sea. And for icing, we've got areas of isolated moderate icing here, St. Lawrence Island, southeastward into Bristol Bay, maybe southern Kuskokwim Valley, and southern Cook Inlet. Maybe some heavier icing here, just clipping southwest Kodiak Island. Could be considerable moderate icing right up into the Aleutian Range. And from there, taking a look at the 33,000 foot wind flow chart. Trough, couple of low centers out here, south to south, mainly south winds at about 65 knots at 33,000 feet here for the Kodiak Island area in the southwest interior. High pressure, light winds, southeast coast right on up to the Arctic coast. Stronger winds out here out of the northwest, about 100 knots blowing across the Adak and Atka Islands. And at, let's see, 9,000 feet, low pressure near the Alaska Peninsula here, kind of a broad area low pressure covering the southeast Bering Sea. Not too bad on the winds. Strongest here, southeast 50 knots across Kodiak Island, diminishing to 30 knots, and then down to 20 knots over the Yukon Delta, coming back around pretty weak northerly flow in a narrow band there. Near or just west of the Pribilof Islands, only 20 knots, so picking up to about 40 knots for Adak and Atka. Light and variable under high pressure for the interior on down across the Gulf of Alaska and the southeast coast. About the same pattern here at 3,000 feet. Still looking at those stronger winds, stronger lower level winds along the Arctic coast are out of the east at about 35 knots. And east-southeast 30 to 40 knots across northern Bristol Bay into Kamishak Bay, Kodiak Island area. Kind of a complex low center here over the southeast Bering Sea. Looking at north winds on the back side of that system at about 35 knots. Pretty light for the remainder of the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Turbulence with those stronger southeast winds here. Considerable moderate turbulence. Kodiak Island up into Bristol Bay across the Aleutian Range, Kamishak Bay. Light to isolated moderate for the Fox Islands. And also up along the Arctic coast. Pretty smooth everywhere else.